Hello and welcome to another episode of On The Topic. I'm topless because it's bloody hot here in the UK. I'm Alex.
It is quite hot, isn't it? I'm not quite feeling myself. My name's Dan, but you can also call me Stephen.
Of course. And welcome to another time-relevant, delicious audio podcast. This week, if you read the description or the title, you know that we are doing the season review of Marvel's Moon Knight TV series, TV show, streaming show. I don't know what you call it, Dan. All those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's on Disney Plus. Six-parter. Part of the MCU. Produced by Marvel Studios. I mean, what more can we say about that?
That's it. Everything is, as Dan says, described on the tin. But before we get into that, Dan, tell us, what's up? Share with myself and the listener. Why don't you feel yourself? Or is it because you're talking as Stephen and actually you're perfectly fine?
I'm talking to Stephen.
Oh, right.
So Stephen's talking right now. This isn't Dan.
Wait, who are we talking to now?
I don't know now.
Oh, wow.
Let's just go. Let's just stick with Dan. It's easier, isn't it?
Okay, right. Good, but Dan's okay.
Dan is okay.
Perfect. You been up to much recently, Dan?
What have I been up to? I tell you what, Alex, I dived into The Orville, which is on Disney Plus.
Ah, yes. I saw that on the socials. Gave it a like, emphatically. You wouldn't know that, though, because you can only give a single like, but it was emphatic. I like The Orville too. It's good, isn't it? It's
fantastic. We're only like 7, 8 episodes in, but I feel like it's hitting a childhood spot here with me because I grew up, as a nipper. I used to watch the original Star Trek series with my nan and my dad. But it's nice to sort of have that sort of twist on, because it's like a Star Trek with Family Guy in it, right? That's the best way, but it's got a bit of humour in it.
I mean, the Star Trek community, and I talk on their behalf because I've been part of it for 30 odd years, makes you sound really old. But it's not Star Trek. It's tongue in cheek. It's a riff on every single theme, shot and storyline. But the Star Trek community, the Trekkies, have embraced it because it pretty much is Trek in all but name. It's oddly, although it's making fun of it, staying quite true to the genre. And I think there's something quite endearing about it, Dan, isn't there? Like the characters are actually quite in depth. I mean, you'd expect that from Seth MacFarlane. He clearly knows how to write, and he's clearly invested in it. Obviously, he stars in it. But it's really well put together, and they haven't shied away from the CGI. It looks great to me. Do you think? Like, it looks pretty bang tidy.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't take itself too seriously. No. In the sort of 7, 8 episodes I have watched, it does have its moments, and I'm really enjoying it, and I can see me and my other half just going for it sort of quite easily. To be honest, it's a good, easy watch. As I said, it doesn't take itself too seriously. You don't have to pay too much attention, and it's got a bit of a laugh to it. It's brilliant. I cannot fault it. I've also rekindled my love for a band which I listened to at the start of the early 2010s.
Oh, yeah.
Called 4 Year Strong. They are they're not hardcore. That's probably the wrong word to use. They're a pop punk, melodic, hardcore, easycore band.
I probably only understood probably a half or a quarter of what you just said, Dan, but it sounds like it might be something I'm interested in.
They're quite good. I mean, they've been around since 2005, and I only really discovered them, say, 2010 when they released Enemy of the World was the album. Opening track, It Must Really Suck to Be 4 Years Strong, is an absolute banger. I definitely think there's some songs in there that are worth checking out from their discography if you want to try and get involved. Just go on Spotify and have a listen.
I shall.
Has its moments. But that's it really for me, Alex. Oh no, I tell a lie. Obviously at the time of recording, we've started watching Ms. Marvel.
We have.
Which, do you know, I didn't think I'd like it as much as I do.
He didn't, guys. but he does.
It's I, I just find her character a little bit annoying. I don't know if that's because of the Avengers game. I never really sort of connected with her through the comics either. But actually, the live action is fantastic, and I like her new powers because obviously she doesn't stretch and big and all that stuff. She's got like weird cosmic glowy things. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's like Green Lantern." Fuck Green Lantern. This is better.
Yeah, and it's that's a different franchise. You know,
Indeed.
a lot of even Ryan Reynolds has learned from that failed film. I mean, I bloody went to cinema.
Oh,
I knew it was a car crash when I watched it.
we both parted money on that film. Jesus.
Terrible. So they've obviously learned from it, and why not? I mean, it makes her more versatile. She's more maneuverable. I wouldn't say believable because it's not supposed to be, but you know what I mean? Like I can get on board with this version, as you say, getting larger. Well, we've already got that in Ant-Man and the Wasp getting smaller. So why not have some diversity?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm actually really quite enjoying it. The art style is really interesting. Don't you think? You know, like how they're showing text messages and it's like the lights and windows, or it's the traffic or the crossing, and it's really intelligent but dynamic, and it's different. And I think there's been some, because I'm quite interested in reading all the comments in the social media, and people saying, "Oh, it's a teen drama." Okay, well it is, but so it's also like a coming of age show, and we kind of had that with Tom Holland in Homecoming. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm really enjoying Iman Vellani's, I hope I pronounced her right, apologies, her performance.
Yeah.
Because she actually grew up watching the MCU films. So she's a fan. So anyone can see she's really enjoying her job, and who wouldn't? A lot of these actors, they're already actors in their own rights, and they're coming on board and they're getting a payday. She's actually doing what she loves, and you can see that. So I think that also makes it more genuine.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm almost saying too much now because it sounds like I'm doing a season review, but no, I'm really enjoying it. And same with you, Dan. I wasn't expecting to because I think the game ruined it for me too. But I think she's good. I like where it's going. I haven't watched this week's. It's out episode 4.
Episode 3, and at the
3.
time of recording. So,
Okay.
When we should be diving into, again, Obi-Wan season finale. We're here recording time-relevant and delicious podcasts.
Indeed, as they come. So, no, looking forward to seeing how Miss Marvel plays out. But I'm enjoying it too. It's a good shout.
Good stuff. But that's really it for me, Alex. Otherwise, since our birthday episode, it's been back to work and been quite crazy.
Indeed. Well, I've been pounding the streets of Southsea. Not literally, but with the good weather here, as Dan says at time of recording. Not sure if you can hear in the background the birds chirping.
Blackbirds, yeah.
It's beautiful. So the birds are out. It's a little bit late in the evening, but obviously the height of British summer, and we really are having a summer at the minute, blue skies. It's beautiful. So I'm really enjoying spending some lunch breaks, going down to the seafront, walking along there, enjoying the sunshine and the sea air. So, making the most of our summer, Dan.
Indeed. Before we kick off with Moon Knight, Alex,
Yeah.
I posted something on our socials yesterday.
Oh, right, yeah.
I picked this up from Facebook. It's the classic meme, the guy behind the table. Okay, he's got the mug. Watching new Marvel films after Endgame is like playing side quests after finishing the final boss in a game. Changed my mind. So we did get a few votes on this, and it all came to 100% yes. And the lovely lads at the Star Wars podcast even sent us a little emoji of the 100%. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. Totally agree. I was having a conversation with my mate Ian about this, who I think I've seen almost, bar during the pandemic, every Marvel film, MCU film together. And we were saying, as we were walking away from Endgame, I think went to the pub afterwards to debrief, we're saying that any film that comes after Endgame will just pale in significance compared to that what came before it.
Mm.
And I think they're kind of there. They're well in it. And I wonder whether Kevin Feige has noticed that, because actually announced, I guess he's been forced to, because there may be some kind of that kind of influence going on, that we should know the direction of the end of phase 4, beginning of phase 5, about what the big bad is and what it's looking like.
Yeah.
He said that in the last 24 hours. And I wonder whether, because people are like, well, we kind of feel like we've done this, so what's the point? And I agree. It feels like the side quest analogy, because you kind of done everything else. What's Thanos clicked his fingers, fucked up the universe. The universe is now back together. They're dealing with it. Is there any point? And I'm enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. You know, that's a throwaway comment, and it's more of a philosophical question, but it does kind of feel a little bit like, do you really want to start again? If we spent like 11 years building up to something, it's a crescendo, and now how can you possibly top that? And I don't know if you can, personally.
No, do you know what? I'd agree with that. And I think we talked about this in our birthday episode, you know, from one of the questions. It's not so linear anymore. You know, phases 1, 2, and 3, it was all,
it's all building. It
was all building up to the one big thing. Whereas now, like you said, it's not that I'm not enjoying it, because, I do. I love Marvel. I've grown up on it. I read the comics, I still do. And there's obviously a lot of characters you can draw from. It's not just Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. There's so many characters out there. It just feels like there's a lot going on. I can't really tell what direction they're going in. We've had all these series now on Disney Plus, and we've not really had many films. And again, it doesn't look like the films are really sort of touching upon whatever this next big saga is.
No, it's rather scattered, and it's perfect in some ways, because obviously Feige's probably gone, well, keep the guys guessing. We kind of did Endgame, and everyone knew where that was going. But perhaps he's done absolute blinder this time around and gone, there's no way they're going to guess this, because everything is up for grabs and nothing's up for grabs. With the nature of the multiverse, you can introduce the Fantastic Four in 1 minute, and then 15 minutes later, they're ribbons. And it's almost like it never happened, because it's in a different universe. So, speaking of which, Doctor Strange 2 is streaming now on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But it just goes to kind of show that it's kind of meaningful and meaningless, if that makes any sense. Do you know what I mean? Like it can take you in any direction, and in another breath take it away, because it only happened on this Earth 872 or whatever it ends up being, and I don't know it. I don't know whether that calls into question the credibility. There's an interesting scenario actually that I read on the internet. So again, it's always dangerous when we cite the internet, so there's a pinch of salt here. But was it Imam Vellani, who plays Miss Marvel, was saying that she doesn't know if a lot of the recent films, bar Doctor Strange 2, actually takes place in Earth 616.
That's interesting. So we got a comment from a listener for this episode, and we'll find out more in a minute. It's quite an interesting theory.
Because we all assume they're all kicking it together, but there could be a very good reason, and this is maybe how Feige gets out of it, why the Eternals don't know certain things or don't get involved in certain things, or the TVA from Loki, they don't reference the Eternals, or they don't know about the Eternals because that time stream never exists. I don't know. And that's kind of what I mean to say, kind of, it validates almost everything that's come before it. Because apart from phases 1 to 3, which we know takes place in, I guess, Earth 616, how do you know anything else really apart from Strange 2 kind of shares that world?
Yeah.
Um, I don't think they're going to, and it probably will be um, like a Battle Worlds or Secret Wars type storyline. But I just hope it's not kind of like we had this series and then it was all a dream.
Yeah, that would really annoy me.
That would really suck.
In fact, it probably would annoy the entire. I mean, even if you're just a casual fan that just enjoys the films and the TV series, that's going to annoy everyone.
Well, look what they did in, and I'm going wildly off topic here, but it's kind of on the same topic as MCU. But look what they did on WandaVision and introduced
Quicksilver
from the X-Men.
Yeah,
you know
Pietro.
They missed an open goal there, and they fucked it. And I'm still irritated that they didn't, treat the fans with some respect and go, no, you know what, we're going to fully commit to this. Not, it's a nod, but it's not kind of thing. That pissed off a lot of people, and that was only a cameo and like a cheeky little, well, this could be here, but it's not going to be. So you think you got it, but you don't. I think it sounds quite harsh or sensitive, but we're modern men, Dan, 2022. Yep. I think that's quite disrespectful to the fans to do that. It's almost like making fun of, you want this, but you're not going to get it. And we know that you're gonna lose your minds over it, but it's not what you think. If they did that with such a big franchise and their foray into TV streaming, I wouldn't put it past them to do it again. I really wouldn't want to do it. So hopefully they've learned from that, because I don't think it went down very well either across the fan group.
No, I would agree on that. But we might as well dive into Moon Knight as we've digressed a little bit there, all because of a meme.
Indeed. Well, let's roll up our lovely white silk or satin suit sleeves. Let's don this patchwork mask, and let's start beating the crap out of some ancient Egyptian jackals as we go through the series review of a Moon Knight, which is available to stream and download to your device to watch at a later date from Disney Plus. So if you haven't got Disney Plus, you're going to have to live vicariously through this description and this episode. But if you do, and you haven't seen it, do you want to put a spoiler in, Dan, or is it up to the listener? Yeah,
might as well. People like my dad haven't seen it yet.
Oh, right. Well, okay. I can hear the birds in your background too. Lovely. There we go. More singing. Got background singers back. It's almost like 3 years ago now. Let's dust off the klaxon and give you a spoiler alert.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. That is so good. So welcome. So yes, if you haven't seen Moon Knight, stop what you're doing. Turn back around. Go watch it. How many episodes down was it?
6.
Six episodes. 6-episode run. Go enjoy and come back and join us on the virtual sofa for a bit of a chin wag. But for those obviously who need reminding, Dan, because it's been a while since they wrapped a couple of weeks. What is Moon Knight all about? What we talk about?
It is about a gentleman called Mark Spector, who is a mercenary who has a dissociative identity disorder, is drawn into a deadly mystery involving Egyptian gods and his multiple alters, such as Stephen Grant. Now, this is the 6th television series in the MCU, produced by Marvel Studios, and it is created by Jeremy Slater. Good cast as well, Alex.
Very good cast, yeah. We've got Oscar Isaac, who is quite familiar to the Disney family by now. He's had quite an interesting run during the Star Wars Skywalker saga.
Poe Dameron.
Indeed. And I think in the last film, he actually probably carried it, if I'm true to be honest, because he was the only one really that turned up for the final film, in my opinion. Anyway, we won't talk about that one. We've got May Calamaway. I'm doing a Dan now.
Yeah,
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Have you been on the wine?
Yes, I have, on the sangrias, and it's delicious. So we've got May, we've got Karim El Hakim, we've got Ethan Hawke, among many others. And I don't think they script or scrounged on, again, the casting. Very good choices, Dan, don't you think?
Yes, and Oscar Isaac was actually nominated for Best Hero at the 2022 MTV Movie and TV Awards.
Oh, was he?
Yes, I only
He was
found
brilliant.
out making up my notes.
Yeah,
Interesting, but yeah, very good. As I'm sure we'll talk about as in our bits we liked and bits we didn't like.
indeed.
Also, a shout out to the late Gaspard Udiel, who plays
Yes,
Anton Mogart, sadly critically injured in a skiing accident, I think back in January.
indeed.
Sad times. And Antonia Salib as Tao. Fuck me.
Whoop.
Well, we were already. Tawaret. This is why I don't pronounce Egyptian god names. The hippopotamus-headed Egyptian goddess. I thought she did a great job as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, likable for
Hmm.
CGI god, animal god. Really, really well voiced. Brilliant.
So let's dive in. Episode 1,
Yes.
The Goldfish Problem. Do you know what? I really enjoyed this opening episode, although it's a little bit
Yeah.
sporadic. So we discover Stephen Grant works for the British Museum in London, and he hopes to become a tour guide using his knowledge of ancient Egypt. It's quite vast, if I remember. He's very good at his ancient Egypt knowledge. First Easter egg. I'm not going to try and bog everyone down with Easter eggs in this episode, keeping it simple. Stephen's boss at the museum is likely named after the comic book character Donna Kraft. First appearing in Mark Spector Moon Knight issue 39, all the way back in 1992. So Moon Knight's been going for quite some time, folks. Donna was Mark's publicist at Spectre Corp, which is a company that was formed by Stephen Grant to fund his Moon Knight operations. So he decides in this episode he's going to go to sleep. You know, he basically ties himself down, doesn't he? He's got sand around the bed.
It's a very odd setup. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack, and we just go on the ride. I think this one's a roller coaster ride. This episode, because as you say, it twists and turns. You don't really know where it's going to end up, and as you say, he's tying himself up. You think this is a bit odd. The next minute is in the Austrian Alps.
Yeah. Like there's no messing around in this episode. It is just straight into the action.
Yeah.
And he's witnessing a cult meeting, which is led by Arthur Harrow, who demands a scarab from Grant, who unknowingly has it in his possession.
And it's quite, I almost say it's quite a raw and violent without showing the violence kind of tone, don't you think? Because they don't really show the action because he blacks out. I think that's the whole point of it, is that Stephen gives over to his alter ego, so at this point doesn't know they exist. And when he awakes, there's all these perhaps dead bodies or bloodied bodies on the floor. And he's got blood on his hands. He's clearly gone to town on this small militia group. So we don't really know how he survived with all these people with guns, but he has. And Harrow still stood there. It's interesting enough, this is the first time I actually see Harrow, again, straight out the starting blocks, has some kind of mystical power. He's got the tattoos, the scales on his wrist, doesn't he? And he cooks someone or takes their life force. So we know something's going down. We knew it from the trailer anyway, but we know that there's something that's quite amiss here, and he's in a bit of trouble. He doesn't know why. I mean, you would too if you went to sleep. The next minute, you're waking up in Austria. Lovely place, by the way. Lovely. Have you been to Austria before?
I haven't. It looks beautiful, though.
It is. People are lovely. Food is phenomenal. Good sausage, and lovely scenery, as we see in the show.
Yeah, a little bit of a comic background on Arthur as well. So in the comics, he is a doctor who was up for a Nobel Prize for his work with pain theory, but it turned out Arthur was actually involved with horrible experiments at Auschwitz.
Oh, God.
And he attempted to continue them. He made his first appearance in Moon Knight issue 2 all the way back in Year of Our Birth, Alex, 1985.
Great year. Great music from that turf.
Indeed. I mean, Stephen does manage to escape in a van, but it's quite an erratic sort of scene, isn't it? There's constant blackouts. It's so sporadic. Like I say, there's he'll black out, he'll wake back up, and you've seen something has happened, but you don't quite know what's happened or why it's happened.
Yeah.
There's like people like just like flying across the road. There's things flying into the road to take out the bad guys that are chasing him.
He's about to get shot in the head and then he blacks out next minute. The bloke's no longer there and he slumps ahead to the wheel and it's really interesting take on cinematography. It leaves you and the character kind of questioning what's gone on. That's what I really quite like, is because we're in the dark as much as the character now. Whereas before you join, I don't have a Scooby, who the character is. You know that he's bullied at work, which is really sad. And you know that he loves his mum as he phones her, and you know that he ties himself into bed. So there's a backstory. He's got it over us. We don't know who he is. We don't know his background. But fast forward 15 minutes, whatever it is, 10 minutes, not even that, it's probably 10 minutes. And we're both in the dark. And the levels are playing field. And I quite like that because it's not like any other film where you've got to learn about the character. We're now both in it together. It almost buys you in as an audience. It's quite deep analysis, Dan, isn't it? But this is why I quite liked it, because you both don't have a bloody clue what's going on. And I loved it. I think it was very, very smart directing.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. So Stephen hears a mysterious voice in his head and he blacks out again. And then the next thing you know, he's waking up back at his house. And us as watchers, you're starting to question, well, did everything that happened in Austria, was that real? Was he dreaming? Because you don't really know. And then he sort of realizes that 2 days have actually passed since he fell asleep, which is crazy. He finds a hidden phone and keycard in his apartment and receives a call from the most frequent number in the phone call log, and it's a woman called Layla who addresses him as Mark. And obviously he's thinking, well, why are you calling me Mark? My name's Stephen. Next day at work, Grant is confronted by Harrow, who reveals that he is a servant of the Egyptian goddess Amit. Grant escapes from Harrow, but is forced to remain at work that night on his own to make up for being late. So he's being punished. Could you imagine having to work till late because you're being punished for being a little bit late to work?
No, not this day and age.
Be horrendous.
But I'm sure there's some listeners out there that have had experience of that, or who perhaps have that threat looming over them. Get out of that job if that's you, because you're worth more than that, listener. But yes, I can't, thankfully, imagine that, Dan.
I know when I worked for a supermarket, if I was late by, I think it was over 3 minutes, you'd have to make up like 15 minutes at the end of your shift.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Interesting.
Any way to squeeze a little man. Although the 8 times I was expected to stay late, it's because I was cleaning up the bar. I'm not sure if I've shared this before, Dan. I think I probably have. My first proper job, way too late in my early teens. But anyway, that's where we are. I work for a pub. And it was quite a trendy pub, like a gastro pub. Do you know what I mean by gastro pub?
Yeah, I sort of think of somewhere like the Brew House, where it's serves nice food, good beer,
nice cozy surroundings. Yeah. Not your typical pub. You could probably have a good night out at the pubs, but it's hopefully our listeners know what that means who perhaps don't come from the UK. But it was a nice pub, yes, food, and had really good nightlife. Anyway, that's where you tend to get footballers, C-list singers from the 90s turn up, and they'd give you quite healthy tips. So at the end of the night, you tot up your tips, which is a dangerous phrase to say when you've got repetition at this time of night. But anyway, you tot up your tips and you sit in the dark, which sounds quite romantic now, with your colleagues, with lights off, looking out the window onto the high street. Now, I worked in Croydon. So for those who know Croydon, you may have heard of the fruity nightlife in the 90s and the 2000s and noughties. And that's when I was working there. And sure enough, by the time you mop up the floors and you do all the rest of it and clean down the bar and disconnect the hoses, it's about 12:30. You pour your pints, get your shots, and you all line them up and you sit down and you're talking. And slowly but surely, other clubs start kicking out and all the fights start kicking off.
Yeah.
And then you see the police running down the road or chasing people or people duking it out. And none of them know that you're there because you've got the lights off and you're looking out. And of course, they're not looking in because you look like you're just a shut. It sounds quite creepy actually when you say it out loud, but it's actually quite a lot of entertainment, quite fun. Because of course, you may recognise some punters that you were serving early in the night and then moved on to a different club and then since duking it out with a rival love interest. I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, we're all sharing here on the topic, and yeah, essentially, that's where I'm going with it. I've never been forced to work late, but I've chosen to work late to drink my tips. It's been absolutely beautiful. If anyone has the opportunity to work in a pub, I'd highly recommend it. It's great fun.
Also, nothing unusual here on OTT. We love to digress and move away, and then we bring you back in. It's all good.
Indeed.
Taking you to personable levels of Dan and Alex. So we end this episode on Harrow summons a jackal-like creature, very ugly, to attack Stephen. But his reflection asks to take control of his body. So this is Mark's Spectre talking to him. Stephen agrees, transforming into a cloaked warrior who kills the jackal in a toilet.
He's pummeling the absolute shit out this deadly dog. Again, it's quite a violent scene.
You know,
he's got it on the ground. He's pummeling it with his fists. Blood soaked because, of course, he's wearing a white suit. This thing's bleeding everywhere. It's quite a violent scene. And I think the balance of the first episode was absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
We don't need to go straight into the suit or the superhero. I think it gave us a lot of questions, but I think it set it up perfectly. And there was a payoff at the end. We saw the suit, but then it asks more questions. And I thought it was from my opinion, one of the strongest first episodes, bar maybe low-key. But it was very good.
Yeah.
Very strong start.
Very on point there. I'd agree with that. Because I sort of think back to some of the other series that we've had. Seems a little bit slow, whereas that was straight into the action.
I mean, the other one's quite formulaic. You almost know where they're going and they've kind of got to go through the motions. But with Loki and with Moon Knight, they almost didn't follow that. And I think they both had stronger starts for it. So, brilliant.
Yeah. Episode 2, Summon the Suit. So poor Stephen, he's being blamed for the damage in around the museum caused by the jackal creature. And of course, this jackal creature, that bastard, he doesn't appear on any of the security cameras. No. And poor Stephen gets fired. But he does use a key card, which gets him access to a storage locker where he finds the scarab. So a few Easter eggs here, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
When Stephen goes searching for Mark's storage unit and learns more about Mark, you'll notice it's the number 43. This could be a reference to Mark Spectre Moon Knight issue 43, which deals with Moon Knight fighting doppelgangers of several characters like Daredevil. And there's also a QR code, which is on the entrance to Mark's storage locker. So these QR codes apparently are dotted around each episode, which I didn't realise.
Okay.
And if you scan it, it takes you to the Marvel website where you can read a free Moon Knight comic issue.
Oh, they're good, aren't they?
Yes, very clever. If you look closely, you can see that Mark's case file number is 1975, which matches Mark Spectre Moon Knight's first ever Marvel Comics appearance. He appeared in Werewolf by Night issue 32, which was published in that year. This is also the free Moon Knight issue you get when you scan the QR code.
Beautiful.
Indeed. So there you go. A little bit of insightful knowledge, which I didn't even know until I was making the notes. I thought, oh, okay.
Have you done it? Have you gone back and scanned it?
No, Joe, I think I might have to, though. Yeah. Knowing they're there now and I can get a cheeky free comic, absolutely.
Why not? Yes, please.
So he talks to his reflection, another identity in Stephen's body that introduced himself as mercenary Mark Spectre. the current avatar of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu. Weird looking thing, isn't he? Big, scully bird head.
Yeah.
Glamorous robes, big staff.
Posh sounding voice. Yeah, really an interesting character. Quite an imposing one at that, actually. And it's true to form. I think I mentioned probably in our New Year's episode. So one of the first episodes this year. I did get a Moon Knight comic. And
you did, yes. I remember you showing me.
Yeah, it's a little bit of again, an imposing character. So I think they've really done well to kind of transform him back onto the TV screen. Looks great.
Poor Stephen, he has no idea what's going on.
No, and why would you?
Yeah, he's confronted by Layla, who is Mark's wife, which is weird to say because they're pretty much the same person.
Yeah.
Who is unaware of poor Stephen's existence before being arrested by police officers working for Harrow.
Yes.
Harrow then reveals that he was Khonshu's previous avatar until he chose instead to follow Amit. He explains that he wants to use the scarab to find Amit's tomb and resurrect her so she can purge humanity of evil by wiping out everyone who has or will commit evil deeds. Would you say this is a little bit more sinister than collecting some Infinity Stones to wipe out 50% of the universe? Or
it's of that ilk, though, isn't it, Dan? Because even if you're pure of heart now, something's going to happen to you in the future, and it's all about choice and decision. One of my favorite sci-fi films is Minority Report, which is based on this. This is based upon predestination and choice. Because actually, if I told you now, Dan, that you're going to go and kill someone in 4 years' time, will you end up doing it?
Well, no, because then we'll
exactly
be altering the course of history.
Correct, because you could choose a different path entirely. You can go and you wouldn't do this, or some argue that there's a time paradox, and I'm always going to tell you this, and you're always going to know about it. And actually, I've set the turn of events, and you end up killing someone because I've told you. And that's a different rabbit hole. We won't go into time paradoxes today. But nonetheless, yeah, if you're given the choice and the freedom of choice, is it right that actually you should punish someone for something they haven't done yet and may not do because of choice, of circumstance? So it's an interesting topic that has come up before, time and time again. The usual dabbling in Star Trek or the likes. And yeah, I think it's on par with that kind of snap your fingers, because you're looking to rid the world of quite a lot of people and steal their souls down.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. At least it's not an entire universe. Anyway, we digress.
No. Yeah.
Layla goes to rescue Stephen, but of course Harrow summons another bloody jackal creature, doesn't he? Stephen manages to summon a suit of his own to fight the jackal, but is overpowered and allows Mark to take control. Now, the suit is pretty fantastic. It's dapper.
Yeah.
It is the right word, yeah.
He looks bloody brilliant. If I could have one of those and pull it off, I would. He's almost got like a street brawler vibe. He's got a different looking mask. He doesn't have the hood over him. He's got this mask. Lovely waistcoat, lovely gloves with the cuffs rolled up. He's looking very, very good. But yeah, he doesn't know how to fight. He's a fun-loving guy who works in a museum. So sure enough, as you say, there's a really good scene where he's talking to himself in a reflection of a London bus, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you can take the wheel. And this is probably an early payoff. And I don't think we see this really until the final episode in terms of action. This series doesn't really have an awful lot of action. Not an awful lot of superheroing goes on, does it? But this kind of ticks the boxes. And there's lots of building jumping and chasing. And sure enough, it ends in a crescendo, the finale of the Jackal, almost getting a wrestling move where he's power slammed into a spike and impaled. Disappears. only for Harrow to run off with the scarab anyway. So he still wins, and everyone loses, and Khonshu's not happy.
No, he is actually threatening to claim Layla as his next avatar if Mark fails to stop Harrow. Little nod to the suit, actually, Alex.
Oh, yeah.
The dapper suit. It's a perfect nod to the 2014 Moon Knight comics. This suit was first introduced in Moon Knight issue 1 by Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey, and Geordie Belair. Also, on top of the double-decker bus, you can spot the number 32, as you mentioned earlier, the double-decker.
Oh, yeah.
This is likely a nod to Werewolf by Night issue 32, which, as I mentioned earlier, was the first Marvel comic Moon Knight appeared in.
Beautiful.
Which you can read if you scan the QR code.
Mm.
On to episode 3, The Friendly Type. So Harrow and his followers discover the location of Amit's tomb in the Egyptian desert. So we've moved quite quickly from London to Egypt now.
We have.
In Cairo, Spectre and Grant both experience blackouts, both of them, whilst tracking a lead to Harrow's location. Another Easter egg. At one point, Mark takes control of his body again and finds himself covered in blood and having killed some people. He yells at Stephen for doing it, but Stephen also claims to not have done anything. So this is possibly a nod to another personality,
I think it is.
Which we find out at the end of the series. In the comics, Jake Lockley is a cab driver. Another notable personality, but more on that later. After failing to gain information, Khonshu calls a council between his fellow Egyptians and their avatars to warn them of Harrow's plans. But Harrow successfully denies the accusation. How do these villains get away with it, Alex? How do they get out of being
fantastic
the bad
liars?
Yeah, it's bonkers. Another Easter egg, actually. Some of these gods have actually appeared in Marvel comics. So you've got Horus, Isis, and Osiris. They've all appeared in Thor comics, interestingly. Most notably, issue 239 from 1966. This is where you see Thor and Jane watching as Orin meets with several Egyptian gods.
There you go.
Interesting stuff. I like to give people these little tidbits.
Yeah.
Might get them into comics like me and you. But if not, it's fine. We understand. If you don't want to pick up a book with pictures in it, it's fine.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Hathal's avatar, Yatzil, tells Mark to find the sarcophagus of a Medjay. Magi. Oh, there we go. Who knew of the location of Amit's tomb. Now, Layla finds Spectre and takes him to meet with Anton Mogart, an acquaintance of Layla's who owns the sarcophagus. Again, in the comics, Alex, Anton Mogart is a jewel and art thief, and he was given the name Midnight Man. Bit of a boring name, isn't it? He first appeared in Moon Knight issue 3 in 1981. Of course, Harrow comes along. He destroys the sarcophagus, forcing Spectre, Grant, and Layla to fight off Mogart's men and escape into the desert. It sounds weird saying the same sentence, Spectre and Grant.
I know.
It's the same person.
Yeah, and it's quite an interesting scene, actually, because I think this is where we see his bulletproof cloak.
Yeah, so good.
It's not a particularly long, drawn-out action scene, but I think by this point, it's quite a slow episode. I think the next 2 episodes are quite slow. Not an awful lot happens. It's more set up, and I think it just dangled enough for us to be interested, and it's quite a good scene for sure.
So Stephen actually managed to assemble some of the sarcophagus fragments after all this fight, and it creates a star map. But it turns out this thing is 2,000 years out of date. Typical. 2,000 years. Khonshu uses his powers to briefly turn back the night sky to the correct night.
Now, this scene, Dan, I thought was one of the most impressive that I've seen of the MCU TV series, because it's you got Khonshu there. He's literally turning back time, and the skies are changing so that he can marry up the stars, so that we know the constellation about where the tomb is held. Um, and the world is spinning, and the stars are swirling in the sky, and you've got the poor inhabitants of Earth, now be it 616 or other Earths that remains to be seen, but they're all looking up, going, "What the bloody hell's going on?" Like the world is going bonkers. There's an interesting meme actually. I think I've seen, or I shared you, or we talked about previously, Dan, where you've got essentially all of the poor people of planet Earth, essentially every couple of months, getting absolutely done over, because if it's not a bloody celestial poking its head out of the atmosphere down in London on the Eternals at the end, or you got the spinning Earth of this TV series, something is always going on. Is always freaking out the poor people of the world. So God knows what it's like to experience that, but it looked great. On TV. It's a great scene. And of course, it was all at Khonshu's expense, because he did something that was quite drastic. The other gods weren't happy, and they subsequently entombed him.
Yep, so they imprisoned him in a Ushabti. I think I've got that right.
That'll do.
We're totally getting cancelled at some point.
100%. Apologies, guys. We're trying our best. But yeah, he's entombed in this little, is it a wooden kind of model of some description? And that leaves Mark without any powers. Mark and Steve without any powers.
Yeah, indeed. Which then leads us on to episode 4, called The Tomb. So Stephen and Layla find a deserted campsite at the location of Amit's tomb, which is a maze in the shape of the Eye of Horus. They discover that some of Harrow's men have been killed by undead Egyptian priests. These things are creepy. It looks like something out of Indiana Jones.
It does, yeah. Don't you hate it when that happens, Dan? The undead priests just come along and bump some people off.
Happens every day to me, mate.
I know.
Go to the office, fucking undead priest is attacking me, and
not again
in the stairwell. Does my head in, mate, all the time.
Take a day off.
Yeah, and then these undead creatures, they attack Stephen and Layla. Layla defeats the priest, but encounters Harrow, who claims that Spectre was one of the mercenaries who murdered her archaeologist father, Abdallah al-Fayouli. Jesus Christ, this is a mouthful.
Good effort. We've chosen a really good episode for you to read out these names.
Oh,
we're going to get our Egyptian listeners writing in to complain.
And they do exist. They do.
Sorry, guys.
Grant finds the tomb and discovers that Amit's last avatar was Alexander the Great.
Which I think is an interesting twist, right? Because you're kind of blending in the real world history to the mystical. And yeah, I mean, the guy who single-handedly, I think by his 30s, controlled pretty much 2/3 of the world, is no mean feat. So yeah, he's got to be on something. And apparently, he's imbued with Egyptian powers. That's how he's done it.
Yes, he retrieves Amit's Ushabti from inside Alexander's body. It's quite a gruesome scene. You know, he's putting his hand straight through the mouth, down the throat of this sarcophagus, and he's getting this thing out. I found myself sort of wincing in that moment. I was like, no, why is he doing this? Desperate times, desperate measures, I guess. Layla angrily confronts Mark, who reveals that his partner killed Layla's father. And awkward. Mark himself, before Khonshu, revived Mark as his avatar. Harrow arrives and he shoots Mark. And then Mark finds himself waking up in a psychiatric hospital populated by people from his life. Now, apparently this is directly from Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight comic book series from 2016. After escaping from Harrow, who appears as a therapist at the hospital, Spectre finds Stephen in a separate body trapped in a sarcophagus. They also see a second sarcophagus with someone else trapped inside before being greeted by the female hippopotamus-headed figure.
And this is a really interesting twist. It's almost like literal gaslighting, Dan, like saying that you've got a problem and that these things don't exist. And it's a great turning of tables. And again, you could be, up until you got the hippopotamus, you may say, well, has this all been kind of like a dream? Is this not real? And it keeps a lot of people guessing as we head into quite an interesting episode 5. But yeah, it's again tonally different from anything we've seen so far in the series, and I quite liked where it was going. Kept us guessing, I guess, Dan, because
yeah, for sure.
At this point, it's quite clear. Again, they've lost. Harrow's very powerful. He's got too many people behind him. They've got no powers. Khonshu's gone. He's imprisoned. You kind of know where it's going. There's got to be some kind of turnaround, but he's in a mental asylum. What's that mean? And how to get out there? And has anything we've seen been real? And again, it kind of puts you in the shoes of the characters. The characters don't really know what's going on. You don't really know what's going on. I think it's really smart, again, just to kind of make sure that we're not just left in the dark. We're learning with the characters, and it's such good writing. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
As you mentioned, episode 5 is called Asylum. So this is where we start with Taweret explaining to Mark and Stephen that they're dead and that the hospital, quote unquote, is actually inside a boat sailing through the Duat. I swear to God, I'm hoping I'm doing these words justice, Alex. I really do. Otherwise, we are definitely getting cancelled.
I can't do any better. But yes, the Duats, I think it's called.
Talking of cancel culture, we should probably do an episode on that. And again, trying to avoid getting cancelled ourselves could be an interesting episode. One for the future, we'll see. So Taweret, she weighs the hearts of Mark Stephen on the scales of justice to determine whether they will be allowed to enter the field of reeds, which is, I suppose, like a heavenly place, isn't it, amongst the Egyptians?
I think they're saying that's where your happiest memories are or something. But yeah, it's your heaven.
She advises them to help each other uncover hidden memories causing their imbalance. So the scales aren't quite balancing up.
Chaos, I think that's what it's referred to as, isn't it? Their bodies or their hearts are in chaos.
Yes, that is it.
Which, yes, is quite apt given everything we've seen so far in the series.
Yeah, so we find Stephen, he sees a memory of Mark's younger brother, Randall, who sadly drowns, and Mark's mother blaming him for it, which is quite a sad, dark twist on the backstory. This
whole set of scenes and how you're uncovering it along with Stephen, it's horrible. Because Mark's like, no, you don't see this, And Stephen's like...
It all keeps pushing him back, doesn't he?
Yeah, like, no, I do. I need to see this. I need to understand. Mark's like, no, don't do this. Because he doesn't want to relive it. And it's horrible. And I guess it all comes to an end where we find that essentially his mother never really treated Mark as a child. Always blames him, as you say, Dan, for his brother's demise. And didn't she commit suicide or something? Or
yeah, she goes off the rails, and I know she sort of dies later on. I think she sort of becomes an alcoholic, and stuff like that, which is, it's quite sad. It's quite
really sad,
dark, backstory to the character. But yeah, so Mark reveals to Stephen how he became Khonshu's avatar while on a mission, and his partner Bushman. But that whole backstory, actually, I don't think we sort of touched on it. That was how, Stephen was born.
Yes,
because Mark sort of tries to block out all that bad stuff, and
he goes to that place of, I think, protection.
Yeah,
which the human mind does anyway. Either you can suppress it or you can choose doing it in a number of different ways. And as you say, Dan, he chose to become Stephen, which is this optimistic, naive version of himself. And whenever his mother was banging on his door, or whenever he was sad, he'd switch to this other persona who would be absolutely, totally oblivious to what's going around him, which is really, again, really, really touching and really tragic. And to where then, I think he's at his mother's funeral, his wake, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're in the US, and he's racked with guilt and with sadness. And he just switched to Stephen, and then now it's just Stephen. It's no longer Mark. And Stephen's like, oh, what am I doing here? This is odd. This is London. And I guess that's where we pick up then Stephen going to London and living out his life. And then when we come full circle to the first episode, but it's really, really tragic. And it's one of the saddest backstories I think I've seen in the MCU. It's really quite raw.
Yeah, agreed.
It really deals with some really tough themes. You know, it's none of that is easy to swallow, let alone act it well and with care and attention. Because there are people that go through this. I'm not saying exactly, they're not going to be thinking that they're superheroes, but they will have some experience where they're having to divert these feelings into something else, and it might manifest in some mental illness, some description. And I think it's I'm kind of skipping to the end here, but I'll just say it now to finish it off. But I think it's handled. I think this word is probably wrong, but I can't think of a better one. But beautifully, do you understand what I mean by that, Dan? Like it's really quite touching to watch because it's handled with care and love. It's, again, getting really quite deep, but I do feel that, and it's really quite an upsetting episode. But I think we need to go through that to kind of give the characters closure and to move forwards. But I mean, where does that leave them? Because they're working out the backstory, but they're still technically dead, Dan. So what happens next?
Well, where are we? So Mark and Stephen actually convinced Tararet to let them return to the living world to stop Harrow, and she steers the boat towards the Gate of Osiris.
Ah, yes.
Dr. Harrow mentions to Mark that he's currently a patient at Putnam Medical Facility, because it sort of jumps backwards and forwards to this to the asylum,
asylum,
in Chicago. Now, in Moon Knight comic book series from 2016, which was written by Jeff Lemire, Mark is a patient at Putnam Psychiatric Hospital in Chicago. Dr. Harrow convinces Spectre that he has to fully open up to Stephen, and Mark reluctantly explains that he unknowingly created Stephen as a result of their mother's abuse, which we've sort of touched upon. Of course, we sort of see that in the backstory. No, there's another QR code, Alex.
Oh, right.
So when Stephen spots one of Mark's memories in a bedroom, you can see a QR code for a floor map. If you scan the QR code, it actually takes you to a free copy of Moon Knight issue 1 from 1980. This QR code was also present in episode 3. We learn that Mark's younger brother drowned when he was younger, which caused Mark's home life to become worse and worse. In the comics, Randall Spectre, who's Mark's brother, doesn't die when they are younger, but he ends up becoming Shadow Knight, one of Moon Knight's greatest adversaries. Interesting. Shadow Knight thought he was chosen to be Khonshu's avatar. In a series called Shadowland Moon Knight issue 3 from 2010, Moon Knight actually ends up killing Randall. So slightly different twist there, but I mean, I'm sold. I need to go read some Moon Knight comics.
It might be, if there's a series 2, it might continue. He may not be dead after all.
No. So Mark and Stephen, they reconcile with each other, but their scales fail to balance, causing hostile spirits to attack them.
Yes.
Whilst fending them off, Stephen is consumed by the duet. The scales are balanced, and Mark finds himself in the field of reeds.
Uh-oh.
And that's where we end the episode. it was one of those sort of strange moments. And poor Stephen, he sort of freezes over.
Yes,
What looks
he
like, yeah,
becomes sand, and he's frozen, and he's left. They've been separated. After
yeah,
reconciled, they're again separated. It's quite a sad ending to leave that episode on.
yeah. So episode 6, Gods and Monsters, we find Harrow has killed the avatars of the other Egyptian gods, and he's freed Amit, this big crocodile creature. Whilst Layla finds Khonshu's, oh man, you have to say these words for me, Ushabti,
Shabti, yep.
Ushabti, and releases him. So Khonshu and Amit have this big, it's like something out of Pacific Rim, two
Or
big,
Godzilla, yeah.
yeah,
They're towering over the pyramids of Giza, and
they're just scrapping it out.
yeah, duking it out, beating
It's
the crap out of each other.
it's a great scene, to be fair. You know,
It is very good.
you've got them all running through Cairo, and you can just see the two big gods just having out with each other in the desert.
Well,
Yes.
we can, but I guess assuming the stupid humans of Cairo can't, because it's all invisible, isn't it? It's done behind the
Yeah.
scenes, because anything that happens in that world, us mere mortals aren't able to conceive or see. But yeah, it's all going on, isn't it?
It is, and all the while in the field of reeds, you've got Mark, who's refusing to stay there, and returns to the duet to rescue Stephen. Lovely. With Tararet's help, they escape through the gates of Osiris and awaken in their body, which is still in the bloody tomb, isn't it? With
It is.
blood gushing everywhere.
Yeah.
Khonshu rebonds with them, restoring their powers, and Layla discovers that Amit can be rebound by multiple avatars and agrees to become the temporary avatar of Tararet, so she becomes this cool looking, like,
Very cool.
I don't want to say like falcon, but she's
No.
got the wings and stuff, hasn't she?
Yes, yeah, she looks the part, and yeah, she looks very good. And I think obviously with her being Taret's avatar, that almost frees up Mark's concern that he can't give up being Khonshu's, because if he does that, Khonshu, of course, will take Layla. Well, that's not going to happen now, because she's Taret. So it's the right outcome, I think, for both characters at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. So they head off and join Mark's Stephen and Khonshu in fighting Harrow and Amit. Harrow overpowers Mark and Stephen, but they experience a blackout, during which time they somehow defeat Harrow.
Mm.
Do you think that's possibly? I mean, we sort of know that, you know, from the cutscene at the end of this. Would you say it's a bit of a cop out?
100%. He's bloody powerful. He can summon underworld beasts with his staff. He can take people's souls. Yeah, it's a cop out.
It's a really sort of disappointing end to the fight.
Well, because this guy has been faced, what, 3 or 4 times before, cannot be beaten. He's one of the most powerful avatars, knows all the moves from Khonshu, has, you know, personal beef with him. And we're not given that payoff. Well, we could have easily got, you know, like a psychological tag team between the two characters, but we didn't. And I understand why we didn't. And of course, you say in the cutscenes, or you're inferring at the cutscenes, we know a little bit more. But it feels a little bit, yeah, cheap shot. Do agree.
So Mark and Layla, they seal Amit in Harrow's body, imprisoning her, and Khonshu urges Mark to execute Harrow and Amit. It's a little bit dark.
Yeah.
But Mark, he refuses, orders Khonshu to release him and Stephen from their service. Now, the pair find themselves in the hospital, where they reject the vision and choose to continue their new life protecting the world.
And we're all the better for it.
Yep. So
roll credits.
Roll credits. And then we get the mid-credit scene. And this is the only one of the series. We find Harrow and, by extension, Amit being killed by Jake Lockley, which
What?
turns out to be Mark and Stephen's third alter, who is
Yes.
still working with Khonshu.
On the D-Lo. Of course, Khonshu, as we know, has been a bit of a wheeler dealer, hasn't he? He keeps all his cards to his chest. He knows everything that's happening. And our two characters to this date apparently don't know about Jake. Although those who read the comics would, of course, know about the third Avatar. But yeah, it's a really interesting scene where they extract Harrow from the hospital, and he's in the back seat, and then Jake pulls a gun and smokes him.
Yeah. Brown bread.
Which again, I think is a bit weak.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Like an ending to quite a nefarious villain who believes in the cause and has been turned and knows what he's doing and he's dangerous and all those things combined. And it ends up just taking a bullet to the head and that's it. It kind of feels like a little bit of a... I know they probably did it to kind of close the door on that character so he's not written back in or something. And it's a nice way to introduce a third persona, but it kind of feels a bit, again, cheap shotty.
Yeah.
It shows that all mortals, all of these avatars are mortal men, and I get the vulnerability aspect. But for someone who created so much anarchy and so much death and destruction, just takes a bullet, that feels a little bit odd. Personally.
Yeah. There are a couple of Easter eggs in that post-credit scene as well. So there is another QR code, which is on the poster in the psych ward, where Arthur Harrow is a patient. And if you scan it, it takes you to another free Moon Knight comic called Moon Knight Acts of Evil Issue 1, which is from 2019. And it features Moon Knight fighting Kang the Conqueror. Of course, Kang has appeared in the MCU already in Loki, and he'll next be in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which I think is released next year.
Right.
And finally, Khonshu and Jake's limo is taken directly from 2014's Moon Knight comic book series, as I mentioned earlier, by Warren Ellis, Declan Shelby, and Geordie Belair. The limo is the primary mode of transportation for Mr. Moon Knight in the comics, and you can see that the license plate reads SPKTR, aka Spectre. In the comics, Stephen Grant is a millionaire, so we could be getting more of those origins if we get another season.
Yes, indeed. Big question.
Yeah, so a little bit on the future of Moon Knight. So back in November 2019, Feige did state that after introducing Moon Knight in the series, the character would cross over into the films. Diab stated in March 22 that he felt the character would be part of the MCU for the next 10 years. And I really hope so, because we'll talk about this in our likes and dislikes in a second. And expressed his hope that Moon Knight would eventually get his own feature film. At the time of the series' premiere, Isaac had not signed on to return as the character in future projects. So they're either not yet, but I can see him probably coming back because let's just dive straight into the likes and dislikes.
Yeah, why not?
Oscar Isaac is fucking immense.
Oh, 100%.
You know, that is some serious acting chops. You know, he's essentially playing two different characters, and the way he can just switch it on and off for one and the other is just amazing. I mean, I couldn't do that. It's ridiculous.
No. And he does it at the drop of the hat. And unless there's some camera trickery, he does it in one shot. And I think that probably is what I think really gives this series depth, because he's playing two separate characters on demand. And that in itself has got to be really stressful, because you just got to totally switch in your mind different personas and ways of speaking. I'd love to. I haven't seen them, but I'm sure there are bloopers to this. You must really be confused at the best of times. But he does it so well. And I've read somewhere, again, I've got to be careful what I say, because invariably some people may say, well, that's rubbish. That's not how it works. And I get that. But I think some have said this is one of one of the most accurate depictions of someone who has a multiple personality disorder on
Really?
TV so
That's
far.
insane.
And they're saying that it's handled with decorum and with care.
Hmm.
It doesn't make light, or at least someone very, very, very fortunate, Dan. You and I don't have that condition. We don't have, at least I haven't been exposed to anyone like that in my life. I'm sure there'd be an interesting person to get to know, but I don't know anyone like that. So I can only imagine. But what I can imagine, I think is dealt with quite sensibly. Is again, it's not making light of it. It's not for entertainment, although there are some entertaining aspects to it, the funny, quirky side of things. It looks like it's well researched and it's well delivered.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it being derided or people criticizing how it's been handled, because it is quite a serious subject. And yeah, it's done, I think, superbly. If not, I don't even know what I'm talking about in terms of people who've got this condition. But I know that Oscar did phenomenally at acting. You know, I've loved his stuff in, I think we talked about it before, in Ex Machina.
Hmm.
It's a brilliant channel for film for indie film. And he's great in that. He's gone to some other films. And of course, some with the House of Mouse. But he's phenomenal. He should be winning awards for this because he's so
100%.
good. He's so good.
You know, you got Stephen, who's sort of, I don't want to say timid. That's probably not the right word, but very softly spoken.
I'd
He's
say
got
timid,
a
for
British
sure.
accent. He's got a British accent, and then you've got Mark, who is obviously a hardened mercenary with an American accent. And the fact you've got to go between the two, you know, this is, I mean, I think Andy
Cockney.
Serkis is phenomenal as Smeagol / Gollum.
Yeah.
But it's the same voice. You can sort of go between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, you've got to change your accent sort of
Entirely
at the
different.
drop of the hat.
And I mean, Oscar is, I think he's South American. Is he from Honduras, I want to say? He's from that part of the world, so he's not even North American, obviously, which what one of the characters is. Obviously, of course, he's grown up and he's acted and he's worked in that world, so he's used to it. But he's all right. It's a little bit tongue in cheek, Stephen's accent, but it's, he's put on, but it sounds like he's a British person putting on a Cockney accent. And actually, there's not that many people, but there are some people in London that you could catch speaking like that who aren't taking the mick. They're not that many, but there are a few. And he does it so well.
Yeah.
And you're like, how? This guy is he nails it. And he can do it on the turn of a switch. And it's just, it's jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring. It's, yeah, as I say, he should win awards for this. I don't know what they've entered the series into, what categories and what awards, but he's just immense. The amount of work that he's put into this is just, the work ethic is phenomenal.
You weren't far off, actually. He's from Guatemala.
Apologies.
Yeah,
Guatemala. But yeah, not that really indicates anything in terms of how challenging it is. It's not to trivialize anything what he's doing, but sure, it just says he's working extra hard to nail with quite difficult kind of Western tropes. Even with, perhaps he's had an upbringing in the US, whatever. But what I mean to say is he's done amazingly, and he's so good.
Yeah. I also like that it was something different for the MCU Mystic series. You know, we've been used to WandaVision, Agatha Harkness, Doctor Strange. This just hits it a little bit differently on the Mystic side of things. We haven't really had much of it, and I know they've sort of teased it a little bit in the Eternals with Dane. What's his name? Who's going to be the Black Knight?
Oh right, yeah.
Dane Whitman. That's it. Played by Jon Snow. Not Jon Snow, but you know where I'm going with this.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. Yeah. And I think that's interesting because they're starting to kind of bleed the real world, or what we know it to be anyway. I'm not saying that everyone has to believe in gods or the likes, but anyway, the world as we know it with the comic book one. And I think that's what kind of adds credence to what I said at the beginning of the episode, Dan, about an hour ago now, which is, like how does Asgard not know about the Egyptian gods? How do the Eternals not know about the Egyptian gods, and vice versa? And perhaps they all exist in different universes, different versions of Earth, because surely the gods would care about Thanos. Surely the gods would care about, the tipping of powers and the alien invasion. What were the avatars just kicking back, relaxing in Cairo? They know this stuff's going down. So I think there's lots of questions and interesting debates about, the role of these deities, these Egyptian deities, and actually where have they been and what have been up to, and how come no one else knows about them. But I agree that they give an interesting kind of depth, another layer that perhaps you weren't aware of, and they've been hiding behind the scenes. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's fleshed out, because something clearly isn't right there.
Yeah. Dislikes. I mean, maybe I need to go back and watch it again. I know I will at some point in the future. I just found it a little bit hard to follow at times.
Yeah.
I think where it was so erratic, and you've gone from London to Cairo, and it's just a little bit fast paced sometimes. I sort of found it hard to sort of connect the pieces. And when you're sort of going between, I think mainly from episode 4, 5, and 6, where you're going between the asylum and then the real world, it's like, what is going on here? I can't quite grasp what's happening. I mean, again, I know if I go back and watch it again, maybe I'll understand it better. And I certainly will revisit that. And I think, as we mentioned in the final episode, the last battle is just a cop-out. It's quite disappointing. It was sort of building up to something sort of quite grand, and then blackout. Oh, he's defeated Harrow. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I mean, that's probably the only real dislikes, because otherwise I think this is quite a fantastic series.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
I mean, my don't disagree. My only additional was Ethan Hawke. When he was first casted, I thought, he's a well-known name. No disrespect to him, because I can't act, but I wouldn't say he's like A-lister. He's probably on the fringes. Like, people know of him. He's famous. He's got a famous family. I like most of the films he's in, actually. I think there's some noughties films. Also Street Kings. I don't think he's in it, but I think he's in like some police drama films, and he's very good. Day Walkers, I want to call it. Hang on.
Let's have a look. Previously going through Wikipedia.
Daybreakers. Brilliant film, underrated. And that's with William Dafoe and Sam Neill, actually. Ooh. And that's have you seen this one? Does it ring a bell?
I haven't seen it, no, but
it's really good. Go and try and watch on any kind of streaming. Paramount Plus is out today, Dan, by the way, as a time recording. Yeah, and there's some interesting films on there, of course, because Paramount don't have rubbish films. They have some, but they have quite good catalogues. So I've got the free 7-day trial. All of Star Trek's on there. That's what I'm there for. They've got Halo on there, Halo series. Anyway, I digress. It might be on there. If it's not on Amazon, it's not on Disney Plus or Star, as they call it. Anyway, Daybreakers, a quick digress, because I think it's really worth noting. 2009, it's horror stroke. They call it sci-fi. It isn't. It's horror. And effectively, the world is turned on its head. So everyone's a vampire. And there's only a few humans that survive out in the world. So there's a plague, and people now just have to drink blood to survive, and they don't like the sunlight, and everything's revolved around kind of the vampire tropes, right? So everyone's got like blackened windows, and no one goes out during the working day, and everyone comes out at night, and they socialize at night because, of course, the sun's going to burn them to a crisp. And I won't spoil it, because it's not one of my favorite films, but I do enjoy watching when it's on. Anyway, Ethan ends up becoming human again, and society starts to break down anyway because there's a blood shortage. Because guess what, your food's running out because everyone's a vampire. So what do you eat? It's kind of it's the idea that the vampires aren't in the darkness; they are the dominant species, and actually the food, the rarity is the human race. Anyway, it's a fascinating concept. A little bit rough around the edges, but it's a great twist at the end, and some very good actors. Ethan, the point I'm making, is great in that, and I love his films. And when the casting was announced for this, and he was Harrow, I was like, is this the right move for the MCU? But he's great in it because he brings across that conviction to the cause, and he kind of believes that he's on this this route to cleansing the world, and he truly believes in his mission. And he's obviously saddened, hardened, dismayed, whatever you want to call it, by his experience with Khonshu. It's almost like a revenge story, and that's what makes him even more dangerous. So I think for me, he was a brilliant casting as well, but for different reasons. And I think he was incredibly strong. And I liked at the end how Layla then was a Scarlet Scarab. That was the name of her, Scarlet Scarab. So she looks bloody brilliant. As you say, the wings look great. She's got the daggers, and she's another street brawler. And it's a great character to kind of have someone who's in the action at the end. And I thought she was great. Really well played by what was it? What's her name again? The lass.
It is.
Not able to pronounce her name, are we?
May Morwe.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. I dropped you right into that one. But she did great. Not too personable, I think, in the first episode or first couple of episodes, but I think I really warmed to her. She then started to warm to Stephen, and she got to know who Stephen was with Mark and the rest of it. So I think casting for me, big thumbs up, brilliant. The things I did like, I think, as you say, Dan, I'm not going to go over it. Cop outs. They've left it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
they've said that they purposely haven't said there's a series 2 because they want to enter a particular category of awards which isn't for ongoing series. They're like considered just a standalone. It's kind of like a political move, because if they announce the series 2, they can't be in the running.
Yeah.
I can't remember the awards have been nominated for. But then if there's not a series 2, then what was the point of it all? Do you know what I mean? Like, why have the blackouts, and then why dangle the third persona, and why bother to kill off Harrow that way? I mean, why do it in the first place? Shitty, but why do it in the first place if there's not something to come after? You know what I mean? So it feels a little bit of a messy ending. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a sour taste in the mouth, but I don't think it had been handled particularly well. I don't know whether it was rushed because of COVID. There's only so much you can blame on that now. That was so 2020.
We're sort of getting back to normal as a world now.
I don't know. I don't know, Dan. But I 100% agree. Those would be my only criticisms. I felt as though we were owed a little bit more for the amount of time that we invested. Interesting enough, Dan. Critics, I mean, we're critics, you listener critics, we gave it a 91% score in Rotten Tomatoes, apparently, as we did for Loki, as we did for Hawkeye. So it's consistent with the other ones. In fact, personally, I'd say it's stronger 100% than Hawkeye, and on par with Loki, personally, for what it's worth. The critics apparently gave it 86%.
Okay.
Which isn't fresh, apparently, compared to Loki's 92 and Hawkeye's 92. Now, I wouldn't give Hawkeye 92 compared to a Loki, but here, look, we're not here to weigh up the series, and perhaps we'll do that, Dan. Perhaps we'll do a Phase 4, Phase 5 series roundup,
Yeah, let's do it. That sounds
which
like fun.
sounds quite nice, and get people involved. So guys, start making your notes. But it's got quite a good strong 86 and 91%. I think I'm with you. I'll probably end up watching it again to kind of scan those QR codes for a start, but also to kind of look out for the things that I missed. It's definitely one that I'd want to rewatch. I'm not eager to rewatch Loki season 1. I'm not at all eager, and no offense, I don't think I said this out now to you, Dan. Even I don't really feel a need to see Hawkeye again. I know
It's
April,
one
no
of my
surprise to you.
favorites. It was one
No,
of my
is it?
favorites. Yeah, I really
You are
enjoyed it.
missing.
No,
Oh no, you know about it. It's done now. It's Christmas. He makes it home. There's a feel good factor, but that's about it.
oh,
There's at least
let's do it as a Christmas series then. I'll watch it at Christmas.
maybe I might change my mind in 5 months' time. I probably won't, but Moon Knight I will watch again because it's just so different. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
There
So
are
I
some faults, but I really liked it.
definitely need to watch it again just to sort of try and piece things together. I sort of tend to find that I do better watching it again the second time.
Yeah,
Bit like when we watch an MCU film again for a second time.
yeah.
Something
You want to get through it. I think we talked about this before. At least I think I've said it out loud before to someone. You want to get through the film and then digest it, and you see it again, fully knowing what's going to happen, and you relax and you properly take it in. And I think that's kind of what I want to do in Moon Knight. Every week I was burning through because I didn't want to see the bloody spoilers online.
yeah.
Whereas
Same.
now I kind of know it. I want to go back and enjoy it for what it is. And I think that's probably what I'll do with Moon Knight.
Yeah, like I said, I think when you go back into something for a second time, you're more relaxed. There's no expectations. You know what's going to happen. It's just a lot easier to watch, a lot easier to sort of digest.
Yeah.
The thing I enjoy about doing the podcast, we'll talk about it in a minute, no doubt. But we're going to the cinema.
Yes.
I've
We'll
managed to
let
avoid.
loose.
I've managed to avoid all the spoilers for this film, and
Yeah, same actually.
yeah, I've
Sorry,
got-
we're watching
I've-
Jurassic World Dominion.
We
in
are,
case
yes.
you're wondering, guys. Yes.
We want you to get involved in that. Obviously, we'll give you the contact details shortly. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going in tomorrow with some kind of expectations. I've got high hopes, and yeah, I imagine when I see it for a second time after seeing it the first time, it'll be okay. Okay,
Yeah.
just take it for what it is.
Mm.
But before we get on to Jurassic World Dominion, we got Multiverse Dan. He tweeted us
Oh yeah.
about Moon Knight. He said, bit late to the party watching this. 2 episodes in and glad I saw Doctor Strange 2 first. Surely there is something similar to dreamwalking going on. Definitely some multiverse shenanigans. I also think that the parts of Moon Knight that took place in the hospital, except where the hospital was in the underworld, took place in another Earth in the multiverse. The Mark Spector was able to experience what joke Earth Mark Spector was doing, causing him to go even more insane and showing a further breakdown in the realities of the multiverse.
Wow. That's deep.
That is deep. We sort of mentioned earlier, we're talking about we don't know where these series fit into the multiverse. Are they on Earth 616? We just don't know.
Constantly guessing. And I think that is a stroke of genius. There's no doubt about that. Kevin Feige is phenomenal. He is the architect and been doing this for decades. And I think he's even said that there's another 10, 15 years still to go that he's mapped out. Keeping people guessing and not knowing is part of the hype train, and that equates to money. I think it's really interesting to be able to kind of debate and to theorize. So Multiversal Dan might be onto something. It might be onto nothing.
So.
But that's the genius of it all. Everyone's right until a version comes out. But because it is the multiverse, everyone surely is right for being wrong at the same time. Who knows?
I mean, just don't go on social media. There's so many miserable bastards on there. It's quite sad, really. People slating Miss Marvel before they've even watched it. It's for teenagers. Yeah, but it's Marvel, and they're going to appeal to whatever age group. just give it a chance. I was so reluctant going into Miss Marvel. I was like, I don't really want to watch this. But actually, 2 episodes in, I'm mentioned earlier, I'm quite enjoying it. So yeah, and some of the fan theories out there are absolutely bonkers. But I think Dan might be onto something there. Talking of Dan, actually, he would like to come onto the show if we ever touch on mental health and pop culture.
Huh.
So could be something there, Alex.
Yeah. Let's add it to the list. We've got a long list, but why not? Always like to have people on the show.
Yes. Talking that long list, we are heading to the cinema tomorrow. So in a few days, a couple of days after this episode,
yes,
you'll get our on-the-go review, which is about 10, 15 minutes. It's the walk from Gunwharf to your house, Alex. We'll do a spoiler-free review.
Immediate thoughts on what we've just seen.
Yeah, and then we'll do a big review, no doubt, hopefully next week after.
A couple of days later, yeah.
And of course, we want your thoughts on the latest Jurassic World film. So you can get in touch with us on @OnTheTopicPod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We've got Gmail, which is onthetopicpodcast@gmail.com. And if you follow any of those socials, I will put a link in the description, and that will take you through to Anchor, where you can leave us a voice message like some of our previous listeners and get involved and be a part of the show.
Oh, yes.
And Alex, we've got WordPress.
We do. All lowercase, all one word, on the topic podcast.wordpress.com. Go have a look. It's our website. We've got our ugly mugs on there. You can put names to faces, voices to faces, whatever you want to call it. You can have a look at all of our previous posts, all our previous episodes, or whole back catalogues on there. So if you don't have a particular podcast player of choice, well, then you can browse at your leisure and play straight from WordPress. And you can also visit our affiliate content partner, which is Morbid and Mundane. So go and have a look, see some wonderful t-shirts by Joey, go support some local Portsmouth talent. It's all on there. And there's a newsletter. Be rather remiss not to mention. Sign up to the newsletter and you'll be pinged the moment an episode comes out. We should probably start thinking down about doing, and I haven't talked to you about this, so it's a bit dangerous to talk about it on air. But we could think about doing some bonus stuff for the website.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know, behind the scenes stuff. I don't know how that look and feel for podcasts. There might be something in it. We can talk about that. But anyway,
we'll figure it out.
We'll probably start using that platform more. So go have a look as it develops. But that's another platform to get your eyes browsing over.
And of course, you can use those platforms to give us suggestions of what you want to see in the future. So we've had one listener ask if we're going to do something on Stranger Things season 4. Now, of course, I couldn't get into it. Now, I found out, Alex, again, this is Multiverse Dan. He was talking to me about this. Going on a bit of a tangent now. When I first picked up season 1 of Stranger Things, I was watching it when I was really ill. So I had the norovirus. So I'd been spewing my guts up. And I decided I'm tired. I need to watch something. And apparently, if you watch something when you're ill, you're sort of almost anxious watching these things, which you sort of head more towards something you're more comfortable with. It
100%.
sort of puts you at ease. So maybe there is something in that, and I will have to watch Stranger Things again, start from the beginning and go away to the end. So
you'll have some associations, some negative associations with it, no doubt. I think I've had it before too, where you've watched a film or something when you've been poorly and you can't quite get into it, and then you just don't want to go back to it because you weren't in the right frame of mind and you've got those negative connotations. 100%. Get on it, Dan. I mean, they're all really good. Season 3 is phenomenal. That's a long way to get, but it's so well written by the Duffer Brothers, so well cast. The music's on point. I think you'd enjoy it. I'm going to stick my neck out the line for knowing all these years. I think you'll enjoy it. So do give it another go because it's good.
I will. And hopefully, we've put the feelers out. We might get some guests on the show soon. One person or one small business has come back to us. So fingers crossed. We're going to keep plugging away and hopefully we'll get some more.
Yeah, by the end of the year, we're hoping to have another handful we've done for the last couple of years of local creatives or businesses from Portsmouth. We won't say who because they're all busy people and things could fall through. But yeah, I say Dan, it's very
It
exciting stuff.
is. But that rounds up for another week. And so we'll see you in a couple of days for our On the Go with Jurassic World Dominion. Until then, I've been Dan.
And I've been Alex.
Later, Gators.